Aside from his one appearance in a 1996 television movie, the Eighth Doctor is pretty much a blank slate in terms of what rules and guidelines any writers would have to follow. His personality had been established, but there is still a lot of leeway to go with him since his first adventure had been during the initial hours after a nearly failed regeneration. This meant the writers that continued his travels in the BBC Books range of the Eighth Doctor Adventures could go wherever they wanted to with him, while still remembering the fundamental points of being that made up the Doctor's personality, whatever the incarnation. As with the classic and modern day series, it is always important to have someone for the Doctor to play off, that role being filled by his companions. In the novels, the Doctor has quite a range of friends who travel with him, each of them with their own backstory and challenges, some of them as convoluted as the Doctor himself. His first travelling companion is Samantha Jones, a young woman just on the edge of adulthood when she first meets the post-regenerative Doctor, who, thanks to a ploy of the Master, is suffering amnesia. After the Doctor encounters ghosts of his previous selves, he soon regains his memory and invites Sam to travel with him. Sam is something of a fitness fanatic, a vegetarian and opposed to violence, raised by left-wing free-minded parents. She grows up quite a lot around the Doctor, at one point separated from him for 3 years on an alien world, maturing into a capable adult. She develops some romantic feelings for the Doctor, which does have some problems at first, but are soon resolved. But the curious thing about Sam is that she shouldn't exist without the Doctor's help. In her original timeline, she was in fact a drug addict and living the total opposite of her current lifestyle, until she encountered a dimensional scar that exists in San Francisco, on the persuasion of the Doctor. The scar is residue from the Master's failed attempt to use the Eye of Harmony access point in the TARDIS to steal the Doctor's remaining lives. When the original Sam leapt into the scar after seeing visions of what her life could have been, it warped her timeline and created the Sam that the Doctor considered his companion. Eventually, Sam leaves the TARDIS, returning to Earth a few years out of sync, and stays with former companion Sarah Jane Smith until her timeline catches up. Although her future was hinted at in her final book, instead of living to be a ripe old age, she was instead shot and killed during a protest rally she was involved in. During Sam's travels, after briefly travelling with another young woman from her relative future and her Ice Warrior partner, who leave to set up life for themselves, Sam and the Doctor meet Fitz Kreiner. Originally from 1930s Germany and a bit of the Jack the Lad who never had as much luck as he thought he did, Fitz was another of the Doctor's companions whose life was changed dramatically by his travels. One of the foes the Doctor makes during his travels in this body is a group called Faction Paradox. This group are attempting to change timelines for their benefit and fight against the establishment that is personified by Gallifrey. They were also responsible for the timeline changes that surrounded Sam, but in Fitz's case the changes were more dramatic, leading to several versions of him existing, that were then brainwashed and made loyal members of the faction. One of them was rescued by the Doctor and restored to normal, and this Fitz, though not the original, has all his memories and continued to travel with the Doctor until the end of the novel's run. After Sam's departure, Fitz and the Doctor are joined by Compassion, another former member of the Faction Paradox. Like the new version of Fitz, Compassion was actually created by Faction Paradox, using a template from a woman called Laura Tobin. Her unique biological makeup, combined with a device she wore constantly as part of the faction training, began to mutate due to her exposure to the TARDIS. In essence, she became a living TARDIS, and this brought her to the attention of the Time Lords. At this stage in the novels, the Time Lords were preparing for a coming time war with an unknown enemy, and wanted to use Compassion in order to create new and improved TARDISes. The three friends fled from these attempts until finally the Doctor was forced to destroy Gallifrey to prevent the war from happening at all. This resulted in the Doctor once again suffering from amnesia, and to allow him time to heal, Compassion dropped him off on Earth to recuperate, then left Fitz on Earth 100 years later to meet up with the Doctor and their original TARDIS. With that done, Compassion went off to explore the stars herself. During their time separated, the amnesiac Doctor ended up becoming the legal guardian of a young girl named Miranda, who was revealed to be a child of a renegade Time Lord from the far future. They stayed together for years until bounty hunters from her era came searching for her and she was forced to flee across the globe. They were eventually reunited for a time until another attempt was made on her. This time, though, an understanding was reached and Miranda returned to her original time frame and assumed her place in the hierarchy of the empire her father had forged. It was heavily implied that her father was in fact some future incarnation of the Doctor himself. Miranda later had to sacrifice her life in order to stop herself from being used as a hostage against the Doctor in a later storyline. Once Fitz and the Doctor reunited, they met two new companions, Angie Kapoor and Trix McMillan. Angie was a stockbroker and loved her job, but still wanted something more out of life, and meeting the Doctor gave her that. Their initial meetings weren't smooth, as her boyfriend died as a result of their first adventure, and learning about aliens and time travel disrupted her tidy worldview. But she came to embrace life with the Doctor and enjoyed her time aboard the TARDIS, before leaving back in her own time frame to raise a young time-sensitive girl who had become a pawn in the games of another of the Doctor's enemies. Angie has the distinction of being recognised as the first Asian companion of the Doctor, although the canonical nature of the novels is questioned. Trix, like previous companions Adric, Tegan and Stephen, snuck aboard the TARDIS after the Doctor initially refused her request to join. A con artist and thief, she is one of the Doctor's more emotionally troubled companions, and successfully avoids being discovered on board the TARDIS for several novels. Her initial meeting with the Doctor did not endear her to him, as she was working for one of his enemies, but she proves her worth over time, putting her skills to good use. Her real name is never established, as it is implied the name Trix is a pseudonym, given along with several other names she uses during her adventures. Eventually, her and Fitz fall in love, and thanks to money she had made by passing on stock tips to Angie after their former travelling partner had left, was planning on settling down with Fitz on contemporary Earth. Unfortunately, this has never been seen due to novels ending on a cliffhanger. Like the audios, the canonical nature of all these companions is debatable, but each of them has gone through significant character growth during their time with the Doctor and have their own set of fans. To many people, they are part of the legacy of Who and have a place as secure as companions like Sarah Jane Smith or the Brigadier.